Welcome to another edition of the Marvel Cinematic University podcast. I'm your host for today, Jay Christie. AC is still away for a bit, but we wish him well, and we're here to talk about the finale, the final two episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, the new animated show on Disney Plus, part of Marvel Animation. And to help me do that, I invited a friend of the show. He's been on the show once, way back in What If Season 1, and because I'm a bad friend, it's taken this long to get him back on. One of my best friends from college. He's a musician and an actor and all around amazing person. MOZIAH. He's so amazing, he goes by one name. MOZIAH, thank you for joining the show again.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I will say you are not a bad friend at all. You're actually one of my best friends, and it is an honor to be a part of the show and to talk about Spider-Man again.
Exactly. Because you're one of the biggest Spider-Man fans I know. I remember that when we were in college, you were making a short film about Miles Morales. You had a Miles Morales suit. Um,
I remember that's a deep cut. That is a
you
deep
do.
cut.
I didn't cut this out if you need me to, but you
Oh
auditioned for
no, no,
Spider-Man.
no. Yeah, yes, I did a very, very long time ago. It was like
What did,
early.
what role was it that you auditioned for? I forget.
It was so lock and key that I have
Oh, you
no
don't know?
idea who. Yeah, I think it was just one of the high school kids. Like I think it was like
Yeah,
someone in the academic decathlon or
got it.
Flash because there was a little
Either
bit of
Flash, yeah. I'm
because
trying to
the
think of the
guy.
characters it could have been because you wouldn't have
Yeah.
been Ned probably because you've been ripped every moment I've known you,
Oh,
and
sure.
and I think that like Flash would have made sense. I think if they were like being the opposite of race blind casting, it could have been the character. I forget the character's name, but the one that Abraham Atta plays. But
Yes.
you should have been there. You should have been there.
I what to call it? I love those movies. I love the way that they came out and everything.
Mm,
It was an honor to audition for it because I think I remember
yes.
at the time. For context, both of us are born in like 1996. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tom Holland was born in 96 as well.
Yeah.
So I think
Hmm.
around the end of our freshman year was when he
Yeah.
got cast. And it
Hmm.
was like over the summer and I remember him getting cast and being like, "Oh my gosh. Wow. This dude is not only our age and everything, but
Hmm.
he's kind of elevating the standards that it need that he's elevating the role in general.
Yeah.
Now I feel like we're going to need if there ever is a Miles Morales, we're gonna want
Hmm.
somebody who is a very, very capable physical actor as well. Because I
Yes.
think it just
Very yes.
did so much for it.
Yeah, I agree. And so yeah, that's your bona fides on Spider-Man. And so we're talking about this series, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and I think that I've made no secret, and I think a lot of the guests we've had on so far have made no secret that like I didn't have super high expectations for the show. Not because I didn't think that a Spider-Man animated show would be good, but because you kind of in the entertainment world, you take companies at their word for how good something's going to be. And Disney Plus was not treating it like they thought it was going to be good. You know, they were like, we're going to dump it over 4 weeks, a couple episodes a week. You know. So how have you
What were
felt it's
your
been up until these episodes?
yeah. And I kinda want to ask you the same question.
Sure.
I so I've heard about the show since I think like 2019 is when I first heard about like Spider-Man freshman year, the first
Mhm.
iteration of it. And honestly, I was going in excited because I think the fact that a black showrunner,
Mhm.
Jeffrey Trammell, was on it was gonna
Mhm.
I thought that was a very interesting choice. And the fact
Mhm.
that they were doing Norman Osborn felt like a very interesting choice. The
Mhm.
moment that it moved away from being an origin story for Tom Holland Spider-Man,
Mm.
the more
Yeah.
excited I got because I think it
Mhm.
gave them a lot of room. The
Yeah.
thing I think watching it, um, I don't know. I think as a fan of things, I totally get that feeling of like, I don't know how they're gonna treat it. But
Yeah.
when I ended up watching it, I ended up really liking it, but also getting more
Mhm.
from it than I expected. I was expecting
Yeah.
something along the lines of one of the more recent Spider-Man series, like Marvel Spider-Man on Disney XD, the one with like him, Miles Morales, and his friend in a school. I was expecting something like
Mhm.
that. But I think the heart that they put into it, especially with like the cover arts and everything, the title cards and everything, the writing, the little in references, even these deep
Mhm.
cuts, they're not really trying to hit like the surface level fans. There's really like
Mhm.
this sense of like, oh, let's just pay tribute to the mythology overall. And that felt
Mhm.
really exciting to me.
Yeah, I felt similarly. My thoughts have been that like I was surprised by um how many different choices they were making to like make it slightly different. Like the thing about it which I've really appreciated is that if it didn't feel beholden at all to any previous iteration of Spider-Man,
Mm.
and it felt like it was, but the thing about it was that it kept all of the same thematic stuff, but it was willing to change
Mm,
things as needed to make it an interesting story, right? Like
right.
it's not like we're gonna copy the original origin in the comics. We're not gonna copy Tobey Maguire version. We're not gonna backtrack from the Tom Holland version. It's like we're gonna take elements that we know, like we're gonna take the parts of his character growth that are in every version of Spider-Man, but we don't need to hit all the same beats. We can have him working for Norman Osborn. You know what I mean? Like that is such an ambitious choice.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing ultimately is that like the growth he goes through is still the same growth that Spider-Man goes through. It's just that they were willing to go down different roads where like you actually didn't know. Like for a story that we've seen so many times, Spider-Man
Right.
trying to find his way in high school, they made enough different choices where we're like, okay, we know where he's going to end up. He's going to end up being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. But like how you get there, not being afraid of like changing a thing. I think
Yeah.
like the fact that this show was pretty under the radar, I think really helped it out.
Yes. I think also, yeah, there was a bit of like an under promise over deliver element. And
Mm,
at first, I think as a fan, that was when you're excited about something, like not knowing too much information can be challenging. But I
mm-hmm.
also think that it served it because I was like, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting. I think Atlanta does a really, really similar thing where it's like you don't know what you're going to get that season.
Mm,
And it's a little frustrating, but then it's like, oh, you're rewarded for not
yeah.
knowing too much. And I felt like that with this show. I also, I mean, to serve your point, I also really liked that there was enough different things. It felt like we
Mm,
were getting the same recipe, but with different ingredients
yeah.
in a way. And that
Mm,
felt refreshing. Where I was like, oh,
yeah.
we've never really seen Norman, at least inside the comic, at least inside like a TV iteration. I haven't seen Norman Osborn know Peter's identity that closely,
Yeah.
that closely so early. So I
Mm-hmm.
felt like that was really exciting to me. And yeah, I don't know, even right down to the bite, and I'm sure we're gonna get to this when we talk about
Mm.
episode 10, but like the bootstrap paradox that we got.
We're gonna talk about it.
Whoa!
We're gonna talk about it.
I know.
Uh,
But yeah,
so yeah.
all in all, I like the show. I'm excited to see what's new about it. I think the
Mm-hmm.
one opportunity for growth I would say is that I would love to. I I don't know. I feel like the animation at first when I saw the trailer was harder to watch, and
Yes.
then
No, I think it is. I think it leaves a little bit to be desired. It just does.
absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know the inner workings. I think they were just working with what
Yeah.
they had, but
Yeah.
it would I can't wait to see I can't wait to see like what the next iteration, like what season 2 and
Yeah.
what season 3 is going to do.
Yeah. And I think that like the show also has a confidence that it knows it's gonna have extra seasons, which is like a thing that I think is served by part by like the animation looks somewhat cheap, and I don't love that. But I think part of that is like they're able to be more narratively ambitious because they're not like I guarantee you like if Bob Iger is looking over Disney's balance sheet, I don't even think he sees the expenditure for the show. So it's like uh
He's going in and being like, "What's the pencil mileage?" Right? Like
yeah,
here, what are we
it's like
doing here?
what is this decimal percentage? Oh, you're friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, sir. Ah,
Sure. I
whatever.
don't know. Maybe he does, but yeah, but
Yeah,
it would be funny to think
let's just
about.
replace another beloved ride at Disney World.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That said, I wouldn't say all of the animation is bad. The action
no.
sequences have been top tier. I
What I
think
was gonna
it's
say, I
really
think
texturing for me. Like I
yes,
don't know the full terms, but like the lighting and texturing
yeah.
felt
I don't know
flat.
the full
Yeah.
terms either, but I
Yeah.
think what it is I think that the actual like quality of the animation and the cells themselves look bad, but I think the choices being made by the animators are good, right?
Ooh, yeah. Yes, absolutely great. Like there's this I feel like I in episode 9 there was
Mhm.
a cinematography choice that just felt very
Yeah,
there first off, the whole season had like match cuts, cool
yeah,
cinematography choices, and I was like, okay, cool. We're this
mhm,
is I feel elevated. I feel like
yeah,
this feels sophisticated. But there
mhm,
was one sequence, like a lot of the action sequences and the swing sequences felt so expansive and
mhm,
vast
mhm,
for a TV show. And I
yeah,
felt like that was some of the highlights for me. Watching Spider Man do all this creative fight choreography, watching
mhm,
cinematography go from like, oh, the inside of a window,
mhm,
like the POV of like the inside of a place, watching Spider Man do this battle and then Scorpion's tail just bursting
mhm,
through. Those things
mhm,
were really exciting. I think it's really like the texturing was left a
mhm,
lot to be desired, but like other than that, like it just felt really
yeah.
fun to watch, kinetic almost.
You know what it's reminiscent of is when you see like I don't know if you've ever done this, but like watch like a person who became like a great filmmaker is like student films from like back before they had like digital cameras, where it's
Yes.
like and like they don't have great actors, like the set, like it's like, but they're making just like, wow, that's a crazy cut. I mean, it looks like shit and the people aren't acting well, but like, that's a crazy. But no, I think that, and I want to talk about episode 9 first and foremost, obviously, and I think that
Please.
the centerpiece of episode 9 obviously is the fight with the 110th Street Gang and the Scorpion's crew. And I felt like, we've talked on in previous episodes about how much we really enjoyed the Lonnie arc, and I think that like it is a great example, I think, of how TV frees you, because movies want so badly in this day and age to have sympathetic villains where you understand their origin story. But the problem is that's really hard to do in like 30 minutes at the beginning of a movie.
Absolutely.
But when you can live in every moment, that when we can spend enough time in every moment of Lonnie's life where he makes one small bad choice, one small bad choice, one small bad choice, and then we get to the place where it's like, oh no, I like the bad choice I'm making. We walked up to that point, so now we understand how he's a supervillain, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Lonnie's arc was really exciting because he's. I think the person I'm watching, my partner and I would be watching it, and we're just like, oh my god, Lonnie, no, and it feels. I really like that arc because I feel like you're getting to know this like very likable kid, and everything kind of end up making a bad decision, and I think
Yeah.
that's very relatable. There's so many times we've seen that kid in high school just like, oh, this guy's got potential. And then all of a sudden, for one reason or another, they're on a different path. And I think that was cool. That was very relatable. And I don't know, it really was exciting to see his journey with the 110th in that way.
Yeah.
It's good storytelling in that it had me yelling at the screen a bunch every single time he made a choice in the best way. I'm just like, oh, wait, Lottie, wait, no. But I think that's the point.
Yeah, and I think the thing too that I really like is that like it's not like he's without choices, because I think the first couple choices he makes are understandable, and then he just gets into it. Like he does clearly enjoy being a member of the gang. It's not like it's an accident.
Yeah,
like
it gives him a sense of purpose. It feels like
exactly. And so we have this scene where Peter comes in, he saves Nico, and Nico I think is such an interesting character choice because she's a character we haven't seen in any of these mediums,
right.
really. Maybe in another animated. I don't know. I'm not an expert in Spider-Man animated shows, but she's a character I wasn't familiar with.
Yeah, she's a character from Runaways, which is a different Marvel Marvel series comic, and then they made a live action series around the time that they made Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah.
And
No, I remember that coming out. Yeah, I think that the bit I always enjoy in Spider-Man properties when you have Spider-Man being Spider-Man alongside someone he knows in real life that doesn't know that he's Peter, and like because there's such an irony to everything Peter is saying to Lonnie is dripping with concern and what have you. But of course, Lonnie is not interpreting it that way because he doesn't know that this guy knows him from anything.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting about the episode because I was watching it and I was just like, how does he know? I was wondering if Lonnie was like, how do you know my name? Like, how do you know who I am? And I'm curious, maybe you know this, but did they exchange? Did he mention his name in the first Scorpion battle with the 110th? Like, oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm muted. That is how good of a producer I am. I don't remember if Dave ever mentioned it.
Yeah,
but no,
and that's the thing that I was wondering because there was a moment where he was like, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be here." Hey, Lonnie, what's up? And it's if I was in Lonnie's shoes, I would be like, "How does Spider-Man know my name?" So I thought that was
exactly. And so, what's also going on, and we'll go back to the fight. What happened at the beginning of the episode, because I just reminded myself that I skipped over this, is we have the incredible scene where Norman goes to visit Doc Ock in prison. And this is like, this is the meme, I had to go to my biggest hater's funeral to make sure he was dead. Yeah. That's what he's doing here. I'm watching the scene and I'm like, what is Norman going to ask him? What does he need? And then I was like, no, he's just there to be a hater. He doesn't need anything.
No, he's just having a gloat round. And I like that because I think that that's a good character moment. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many moments. What I love about this is that they don't make Norman like, they don't make him this character that's all bad. He has some he's genuinely valuable to Spider-Man. He has some good moments. He is a good figure. He's trying. You know what I mean? He's not actively trying to be bad.
No.
But I feel like you get his dark side. You get his like
Yeah,
Mr. Hyde side that comes in, and that was definitely a moment of that where it's like he didn't even need to tell Doc
no,
Ock that he did what he did. It would have
no.
been better for him to not.
Mhm.
But Norman couldn't help himself. He was
I
just
I
like,
think
I won this battle. I won this beef.
I think it goes back to the line in the last group of episodes, which me and our guest last week, Cecilia, talked at length about.
Mm.
The making the line with great power comes great respect. He wants the
Mm.
respect. He wants, and the other
Yeah.
side of respect is like, fear. And to him, it's not worth putting Doc Ock down if Doc Ock won't think of, like, it won't change the way he thinks about him, right? Like, he's taking him down because he wants the respect of being like, yeah, I bested you. And of
Yeah.
course, that is a bad trait, and that's a trait that turns people into villains. Even people who are well-meaning. Once you start doing things because you want, because out of pride, it's slippery slope.
Absolutely. Like spite is sometimes some of the worst
Yeah.
things in a way where it's just
Mm.
like I really really appreciated that aspect because it's just like he won already. He
Mm-hmm.
got what he wanted, but the fact that he
Mm-hmm.
had to gloat about it and put in that extra work to do that,
Mm-hmm.
just that's like I don't know. I thought that was a really really cool like it's a
Yeah.
testament to the writing and a testimony to like how they built this Norman
Yeah.
character.
And it's a testament that they have. And I think that this is fair to say now,
Yeah.
one of our greatest living actors playing him. I think that
Yeah.
Coleman's there. I
Yo,
think he's one of our greatest living actors.
Coleman is incredible. I love him. I think him as Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
There's something. Oh my gosh, what I love about because this is around the time that we're recording this. We're about the Oscar campaigns are going on, and
For the record, this is going up tonight. We have a short turnaround.
oh, okay, great. So the night that we're recording this, the night that you're getting this, like Sing Sing is
Yeah.
currently campaigning for the Oscars.
Mhm.
And Coleman Domingo we've seen so many fantastic performances from him
Mhm.
year by year by year. It's
Mhm.
been cool to see an awesome voice role in there as well.
Yeah.
Because you
Mhm.
hear a little bit of Goblin coming out in his voice every
Mhm.
single time like sometimes
Mhm.
when he when he gets riled up is when I hear it the
Yeah.
most. I think is and it's a gift. It really brings the show to a place, and I think as
Mhm.
an audience member, especially one that knows,
Mhm.
like that knows that this person's gonna end up becoming Green Goblin,
Yeah.
I feel like this is probably how like people seeing Anakin in the prequels
Yeah.
feel, where it's just like, oh my gosh, like
Mhm.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm being teased with it, and every little bit that we get of that
Mhm.
of his Goblin is exciting.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
love Coleman.
I know it's not always the best place to go back to because I know animation people don't like when you bring this up, but it's like I understand that they already had Willem Dafoe from another universe. Just fucking make Coleman Domingo Norman Osborn in the MCU. Fuck it. I just don't.
I am so
He was
here
my
for
original
that.
choice before they switched the whole plot line. My original choice was after the Jonathan Majors thing. I'm like, just give Coleman Domingo the role of Kang. That was my
Mm,
whole thing. But if they're not
yeah,
going to do that, it's just like, also, how many like dudes in their 50s also are like physically commanding enough to be a villain? There's not many. So I mean,
absolutely. And I also think that if they were to do it, they have a very, very cool opportunity to do such cool things with Norman Osborn that we haven't seen yet. Because all we've had
absolutely.
is Willem Dafoe, and then I think I forget his name, Chris Cooper.
Chris Cooper
And
plays
yeah,
him in a bed, dying in a bed.
dying in a bed in Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's all we've
He
gotten,
does.
and then we got Willem Dafoe again,
Yeah.
which was amazing.
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like getting Coleman Domingo to play this role live action, there's so many different things that we could do with
Yeah.
that character. Like, for example, we need a succession in the MCU. We just need like a show
Absolutely.
where it's just like, okay, cool, let's just do a nice business drama within this. I would love to see Coleman like headline that or spearhead that in some way, shape, or form. Just
Also,
seeing
for the record, if they're going to do that, honestly, I would, if I was a casting director, I would call you to play Harry.
that would be really fun. That would, to play Harry? Is
Yeah,
what you're
because
gonna say?
if Coleman Domingo is going to be Norman, I mean, you're the
Let's
same age as Tom Holland. I mean,
yeah, I would be honored. I would be honored. That'd be really, really fun.
but no, I think that I think the thing too is that like we actually really don't, because once again we're talking about one movie. Norman Osborn is really only a normal guy for like 20 minutes of the first Spider-Man, maybe 30,
right,
40.
right.
And I think that like the thing about the MCU is, for good and for ill, I think that sometimes this can make the storylines a bit, like molasses like. But you don't need to make him the Green Goblin in the first thing he's in, And I think that that's a really
Absolutely.
intriguing. But anyway, we'll get to that. I think that that's going to be a discussion that we have more down the road because, I mean, we've been talking about how to get Coleman Domingo into the MCU. I mean, I've been, since I saw Zola, I'm like, holy shit, this guy is one of the best actors living.
You know what it was for
Um,
me? It was all right, between season 1 and season 2 of
mm,
Euphoria on HBO,
mm,
there
mhm,
was an episode, there was like 2 episodes that was like an in between season.
mm,
And it was like very very kind of bottle episode-y,
mhm,
and it's just Coleman Domingo and Zendaya in a
mhm,
diner just
mhm,
talking about being addicts.
mm,
And seeing Coleman Domingo command the scene in that, and the way that he
mhm.
took it on, I was like, oh my gosh, not only is there's a soulful man there, but there's also someone who's very fun loving. And that
Yes.
fun comes from a very, very founded place. And I think that
Mhm.
we're seeing that again in, what you call it? We're seeing that again with him as Norman Osborn.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm,
There's a
I'm
whimsy to
excited.
him.
There is a
There's like a
whimsy.
fun to him. And I mean,
Absolutely.
and the last thing I'll say about him before we move on
Yeah,
is, guys,
please.
if you are listening to this and you have not seen it, please look up him singing "Gary Come Home" from SpongeBob. I don't know if you've seen that, Mariah.
No, wait,
That
that's
the guy who wrote Gary Come Home, I forget, it's a big Broadway guy, I forget his name.
sure.
He's friends with Coleman Domingo, and there's a video from like 10 years ago of Coleman Domingo at Joe's Pub before he was really famous, singing Gary Come Home.
Oh, that's so cool. Honestly, that's
Yeah,
my brand. I have to look up both of
yeah,
those. That's
yeah.
incredible.
So anyway,
While we're
yeah, of
highlighting
course,
what you
of
call
course.
Osborne voice actors, shout out Zeno Robinson as well
Mhm,
as Harry
mhm.
Osborne.
Yeah.
It's been so cool to just see like
Mhm,
black Osborns overall, because like
mhm,
they have waves and it makes
mhm,
sense canonically why they have waves. But
mhm,
Zeno Robinson as Harry has
mhm.
been very, very fun
Yeah.
as well. Like it's just
Yeah, and I want to we'll get to that, I think, when we talk about the end of the season, because I think his character's left an interesting place. But so
sure.
as I was mentioning, so the 110th Street Gang, they're trying to steal the tech from Octavius's old warehouse. They're gonna rob the police, which is just like, I would say, a bad move. And so they're gonna chase. It ends up going poorly, and Spider-Man swoops in wearing his new suit. We had it teased at the end of the last episode,
Yeah.
and it looks great. I mean, it's the best. It's You can't beat the bright colors. I love it.
I shout out to something that Marvel does really really well, is that like
Mhm.
they're very mindful about how they reveal information, and
Mhm.
we hadn't really gotten we've gotten glimpses and teases of the suit, but we
Yeah.
haven't really gotten like a full like this is the suit, and they were
Mhm.
intentional about that in the way that what they did with like the Disney Plus cards, in
Mhm.
the marketing, all of it. So the moment I think the moment that we first see the shoot, the first frame that we see the shoot in, besides
Mhm.
the previously, and we see it inside his
Yeah.
like his glasses, was when Nico's about to get hit by a truck, and then we get a
Mhm.
flash of it on her amulet.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that flash made me go, oh.
Yeah.
And so then seeing the suit actually come out, and then seeing, every single like every single nook and cranny of it, I was so excited. It looks great. It looks
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
And so we have the moment where, the police, they're getting in the skirmish with the police, and then the Scorpion and his gang show up, Matt Gargan, and Donovan flees.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a series wrap on Donovan. Shouts to you, Donovan. I would like to ask the animator if, like, on a polygraph, did they purposely model him after Suge Knight? Um, I'm actually,
That's a
I'm only half
genuine,
joking. I think they might have.
yeah, that's a genuine question. I also, what you call it, like shout out like father figures and influence and everything, because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the primary demographic of Spider-Man is going to be like young teenage boys and everything,
Mm-hmm.
especially young teenage boys of color with this show.
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Yeah.
cool to see like both Lonnie and Peter have like a bit of father figures and purpose, who like father figures who give them purpose, but who are also extremely flawed. So
Yes.
Donovan running away during this
Mm-hmm.
moment, especially when
Mm-hmm.
Lonnie's like, yo, I'm ready to step up, I'm finally hype about this.
Mm-hmm.
That was effective. That was effective in my
Yeah.
eyes.
And I think that, it storytelling is, like, it's cliche, but storytelling is almost always about fathers and sons, and sometimes mothers and daughters, because, like, that's like the most primal relationships we have. And I think that, like,
Very
Spider-Man
wild.
as a character is so defined by his parentage and the lack thereof, and the shiftingness of it. And so I think that that's also a good way to define the people around him, that, like, you can compare. And,
Mm,
like, people say it's a cliche that, like, so many heroes are orphans or whatever. It's like, yeah, because that makes it inherent, like, so much more up in the air, because so much of what we inherit in the world is from our parents, and if you have that taken away from you,
mm,
then you're much, like, you're much harder to pin down. And so,
absolutely.
yeah, they get into the fight with the Scorpion. I think that the Scorpion, I really liked it, the way that they use his, the Scorpion tail, because I think it can be, on paper, I think it gets a kind of a corny superpower. Like it's like okay, it's just one thing, but like he uses it like really violently in a way that like is really cinematic.
Yeah. I There was a moment I think where he sees Scorpion and you kind of,
Mm.
you know that, oh my god, what's that? He has like a tinnitus moment where like his ears are
Yeah.
ringing and it evokes like a feeling of trauma in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really like that moment because I felt like I was genuinely afraid of Scorpion. And shout out to
Yeah.
something that they did in, I think, 2 episodes or like 2 episodes or 3 episodes before where they
Yeah.
showed Scorpion like actually like stab a dude. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Scorpion is a genuine threat. You know what I mean? Like we are
Mm-hmm.
afraid of him. It's hard to get Scorpion. I don't know. I was telling my partner this, but the first time I saw Scorpion was in the 2000 game, the early 2000, like literally the year 2000 game Spider-Man, and he was the
Mm-hmm.
first boss in that.
Same.
And
Uh-huh.
he was also the first boss or one of the early bosses in the Spider-Man the movie game and
Wait,
everything.
that's what I'm thinking. No, I played both. I played both. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's in both of them. Yeah.
yeah. And Scorpion is like one of the first earlier dudes
Yeah.
that you see. And an
Yeah.
early boss indicates like, oh, like I'm not that much
Yeah.
of a threat. I feel like they
Yeah.
really made Mac Gargan genuinely like someone that you could be afraid of, someone
Mm-hmm.
that can literally end your life and would have no feelings about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought I saw it and I was like, okay, that is one of
Mm-hmm.
my favorite interpretations of Scorpion.
Yeah. I think that I think that I think his ruthlessness is really what is so vital because like we kind of especially because like we know we're watching a kid and I think that like we kind of can suspend our disbelief and be like he's only in so much danger but it's like no if you have a character that like makes it abundantly clear that he's willing to murder him then he's scary like beyond
Yeah.
his actual powers it's like he's willing to do it and so that makes him much scarier and so we have the fighting and Peter's kind of holding his own kind of not kind of getting worked. It's hard to recap a fight scene, so that's why I don't generally do it.
Absolutely.
But what happens at one point is that Lonnie goes into one of the trucks that they're taking from Octavius's lair, and he knocks over a canister that
Yeah.
gives him superpowers, as is wont to happen in the Spider-Man universe. Um,
Hmm.
how do you feel like? Because I know that Tombstone has a unique design. How do you feel about the fact that like they don't get to that by the end of this season?
I I think it's similar to what you were saying about the MCU strength, where
Mm-hmm.
they could they could really slow burn stuff. You don't have to see it within the first 30 minutes. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the fact that we see like Vitaligos type like spots in the next
Mm-hmm.
episode, the fact that it's
Mm-hmm.
a slow burn makes it all the more
Yeah.
exciting. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
every little it's that there's an adage by Francesca Sloan when she was talking
Mm-hmm.
about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and she was like, if you start people at a 1, by the
Mm-hmm.
time you get to a 5, it feels like a 10.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we got like the fact that we got not him fully becoming,
Mm-hmm.
what Tombstone
Sammy
looks like.
Sosa.
Yeah, Sammy Sosa. Beefed up Teddy Perkins. But the fact that we got a little bit of it, and the
Yeah.
fact that we
Yeah.
only got a little bit of spots made us be like, oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, I'm hungry for
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
I
That's what I
can't
felt
wait.
as well.
Yeah, so I felt it was good.
And I really liked him and Spider-Man fighting together. I thought that they had some really cool moments. I felt like it was nice to see because once again it's another thing where that of course means something to Peter that it doesn't mean to Lonnie because Lonnie doesn't know that he's fighting with Peter. Um
Yeah.
and then we have the moment where Peter is giving Scorpion that work. Like really, I mean,
Woo!
and and, he ends up having he gets he's thinking about being
What
respected. He's
Norman
having all
said.
these things in his head. Yeah, and I think that that's a really I think that the fact that the phrase is with great power comes great respect makes that scene so much different because if it was responsibility, he would pull up. But respect doesn't make you want to pull
Absolutely.
up.
Absolutely. Respect makes you want to show people like, hey, don't mess with me.
Hmm.
And you know what I was thinking when I was watching it? There's a
Hmm.
comic run called Superior Spider-Man where Doc Ock takes over Spider-Man's body and
Hmm.
then Spider-Man is left to die in Doc Ock's dying body.
Hmm.
And there's a scene where he's kind of getting used to like the new digs. He's kind of getting used to like operating the machinery that is
Hmm.
Spider-Man. And he fights Scorpion and he knocks Scorpion's jaw clean off.
Hmm.
Because and that's when he realizes that Spider-Man's not pulling his punches. And I felt like that scene where he's fighting Scorpion there was a bit of
Yeah.
a tribute to
Yeah.
that, because his mask comes fully off and
Hmm.
everything as he's getting punched in the face and everything. And I'm like, oh my God, is he about to like Superior Spider-Man him? And I also liked that they played with that dynamic. I feel like something that hadn't really happened on screen until like the past 4 years or so with Spider-Man is this concept of him not pulling his punches. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I think about that a lot, mostly because in the Spider-Man 2 video game from 2004, one of the stock phrases that Tobey Maguire says is, "You're lucky I pull my punches." So I think about that a lot. But
Yeah, sure.
beyond that, I think that it is such an interesting, because the thing that we always talk about with Spider-Man is that, like, the fact that he makes all these decisions to do so much good with his powers at such a young age is such an inherently compelling thing. And I think like we take it for granted, but it's like of course he's not always going to want to pull his punches. Sometimes he's mad. People are all and that's why with great power comes great responsibility. That's what you have to pull your punches if you have the power to kill people with them. And I think that's
Absolutely.
so interesting that Lonnie is the one who basically gets him, stops him. That even though Lonnie we know is going to be a villain, most people who are watching it, at least a good amount of people who are watching it, know this is going to be a villain. But he is
Yeah.
not so far gone. It's not like he has no more compass. He's like, no, you don't want to kill this guy. And I don't know. I really like that. That's the
Yeah.
way it ends. But that bit ends because it's
What were your thoughts on I want to hear you talk more about that. What are your thoughts on the fact that Milani wasn't quite a villain just yet? What were your thoughts? Especially, yeah. What are your thoughts
I
on
think
Milani's arc overall? Is my question.
I think it starts off very much with him being like a protector, wanting to be responsible, and then him realizing that like he has a place in this gang that he can get love and respect without needing to be not without needing to have the world on his shoulders, because it feels very much like he thinks he has the world on his shoulders for the beginning of the season, and then as he starts to inure himself with the gang, he doesn't need to do that. Like he has people who are by his side, and he doesn't need to like worry about them. And I think that like that craving for that acceptance is causing him to make bad decisions, but I don't think it's quite yet caused him to cross a line where he no longer has a moral compass. I think it can. Like I think that like at the moment,
Mm,
him losing that acceptance from the gang is not really in question, or him like wanting it more is, so he's kind of in a place where he doesn't need to necessarily become a big bad. But when things are pushed, when he's pushed to a place where he has to choose between making a super immoral decision or losing the gang, what is he going to choose? I think that feels like a more realistic way of someone becoming a villain. I mean, so I
sure.
think a lot of people make really bad decisions because they get involved with the wrong crowd, and they're given the decision of, do you cross an ethical line or do you lose the crowd you're with? And not most, but a lot of people cross the line, and I think that's a much more interesting way to look at a villain. And I think because the series has already had enough villains in it, we don't need him to become fully bad. We don't need that to.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's not something that we need immediately.
Yeah.
I think I'm really excited about it. I thought it was interesting at first because at first I was like, oh, they're chummy.
Hmm.
But the more I thought about it, the thing that I really loved was this idea of, oh, this sets up the fact for them to have this sets up the idea of them having tension
Hmm.
much later on in like season 2 or
Yeah.
season 3, where it's like,
Hmm.
oh cool, we are literally being pulled in two different directions, similar to like the Sokovia Accords pulling apart the
Exactly.
Avengers and everything, where it's just like, oh,
Hmm.
my values are here and they've always been here, and Peter being like, yeah, but my values are here. I guess we're gonna have to drift apart in
Yeah.
some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
I'm excited to see that. I feel like it feels like they're slow burning
Hmm.
a really really cool, almost relatable villain
Hmm.
or anti-hero in a way.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do. And the thing I'm excited about is that like they've shown that are willing to not follow every pattern to a T. So he doesn't need to be as bad. Like he doesn't need to become the version of Tombstone people know necessarily. Whatever fits with what the story they're telling is what they'll do. And so after this, we have the moment where we recreate Spider-Man upside down in an alleyway. Always great.
Yeah.
You can't do a Spider-Man without it. It's the good version of Batman's mom losing her pearls. It's like you actually do want to see it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but like there's no romance here, but they do have there is, but they do have the moment of no more secrets. But of course, Nico has a secret.
Nico's got a little secret. She got a little
Yeah,
secret.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
we'll
thought
we'll
that
get
was
to that. I mean, there's not. It's just a tease.
totally, totally. Also, shout out
And then
to
we
him and like, oh, we also see your. This is probably not where you're getting to, but we also see him and
no,
Aunt May watching The Bachelor, and
yes, we
that was
do.
quite fun.
Yes,
Yeah,
great stuff. We have Norman, you know, talking
calling
about
Peter.
calling Peter, talking about how excited, yada yada. But we notice that he is testing Spider-Man's blood on various animals, and he wants to make more Spider-Man. Um, and that's always the thing that happens in these superhero stories is there's always someone who's like, we need to make more of this person, and
Yeah,
it often doesn't go well.
absolutely, absolutely. It's a very big cautionary tale overall.
Yeah.
I thought that was exciting. I also one thing I want to highlight from that moment is that Peter didn't go to the debrief. So I
No, he didn't.
feel yeah, and I felt like that was like a tiny. And he mentioned that in the call. He's just like, "Hey, I was expecting to see you at the debrief, but
Yeah.
that's okay." And
Yeah.
I feel like that was a moment of Peter slowly starting to drift away from Norman and
Mm-hmm.
kind of questioning his influence that he has on him
Yeah.
and seeing if it's
And
actually good for him.
crucially,
Yeah,
I think that that's why Norman wants to make an army of Spider-Man because he doesn't want to have to rely on the whims of a 15-year-old kid to do
absolutely.
his. And so, like, because if you are Norman, if you have Norman's goals, and you're like a business magnate who generally gets what he wants, Peter Parker being the person who you are tasked with like cleaning up crime is super unreliable, and you would like,
Oh
and not
yeah,
say that he's not.
totally. If I was
Yeah,
Norman Osborn, I would want a robot to do it. Like I would
yeah,
want somebody whose mind I can control
yeah,
to do it.
yeah.
And I feel
It's like, what
like
the fuck do you mean you can't stop the bank
yeah,
robbery because you have algebra?
I think also I think also it's could it be that he was also a little bit intimidated by Peter Parker's moral compass? You know what I
Oh, I
mean?
think so. Yeah.
I think that that moment that came to a head for
Mm-hmm.
him was, oh yeah, I see that there's good in you. I see that you're willing to pull your punches. I see that your values get in the
Mm-hmm.
way of what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
get out of you. Let me
Mm-hmm.
move away. Let me
Mm-hmm.
slowly start to move away from
Yeah.
you a bit or find somebody who I can control in that way. So
Mm-hmm.
it's the next logical step. And it all
Mm-hmm.
also opens up a variety of possibilities. So I'm
Exactly.
excited
Because
about
if
that.
there's anything that Spider-Man series and comics like to do is give other people spider powers. And I've seen
Yes.
a lot of people complain about this on the internet. The thing is, who cares? I just don't care. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I feel like it's also necessary. You know what I mean? We had a mythology, a very self-contained, nearly self-contained mythology for many, many years. I think Spider-Verse really opened that up, that
Yeah.
idea of like anybody can wear the mask.
Mm,
And I think it's going to allow it to move forward. It doesn't just have to
mm,
be the same kid from Queens doing it. It
yeah.
could be this person
Hmm.
or that person. So I'm
Exactly.
excited about
So
that.
in the next episode, we start off with a scene, a classic Spider-Man type scene where his group has to present a diorama and he's running late because he's having carjackers.
Yeah.
And
Harry was right. Like, why is he doing this right before his presentation? Especially
yeah,
if he's the one with the diorama.
yeah, that's really the just like what do you have the diorama, and he breaks it somewhat, which is to be expected. Like once again, it's like a classic Spider-Man
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. Luckily, they still got the grade. They got an A
Mm.
minus. So, but yeah,
Oh, perfect. And yeah, so that works out for them. And then we have the bit at the at Oscorp where we learn that all of their projects are being put together for a thing called Project Monolith, which doesn't sound ominous at all.
yeah,
And so what we learn is that they are going to be creating a gateway for faster than light travel through space via the scientist whose name I don't remember, played by Paul F. Tompkins.
yeah. Is
And
that the Mr. Red Hair, right?
yeah, like I got it.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
pull it up.
that guy.
Dr. Whitman.
That's Paul F. Tompkins.
Yeah,
Oh, thank
yeah,
goodness.
the goat. And so they're about to open it up, and before they do, none other than Doctor Stephen Strange shows up, and there's some confusion because Peter recognizes him,
Mm,
but Doctor Strange doesn't recognize anything that they're talking about.
yep, yep. He was just like I think the line was he was like, oh, you're the guy from you're the guy from
Mm,
Midtown, right? It's like, no,
mm,
I'm from Greenwich Village. And I thought that was
mhm,
hilarious.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so they end up opening up the portal, and of course, immediately, a symbiote type alien. I'm not sure exactly what it is. Apologies.
Yeah.
If Anthony was here, he would correct me. But
It's a symbiote, definitely a symbiote type alien
yeah,
comes on out and shows
yeah,
himself.
and starts fucking shit up because like no shit. It's just a dumb decision. Why you open up a portal?
Yeah.
Open up a
If
portal
I'm
between Earth and Venus to
Yeah,
demonstrate
I'm
it.
with the. Can you imagine if I was like, I'm with the alien? If I saw a portal open up inside my home, I would go up and
Yeah.
start fucking shit up too. No, but
Yeah.
like
I just.
it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah.
I'm also gonna shout out Norman right before he opens up the portal. Norman has a little tiff with Stephen
Yeah.
Strange, and it
Right.
feels almost like Norman is spiraling a little bit or grasping at
Mm-hmm.
straws. He's immediately trying because I feel like there's a bunch of
Yeah.
pushback from Norman's decision to do this project without anybody knowing this
Mm-hmm.
gateway to space that no one knew about. And immediately people are like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And Norman is kind of like pushed against the corner. He's like, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ask for permission. And then Strange comes out. And the moment Peter is like, oh, you're the guy from Midtown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Norman's like, you caused this. So why should
Yeah.
we trust you and everything? This is exactly why my plan should work. And I thought
Yeah.
that was a really I don't know who wrote the episode, but shout out to the person who wrote the episode because I was like, oh wow, that's exciting to me. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think what's going on there is like clearly he has some sort of resentment or does not believe in like superheroes or the Avengers, right? He thinks that like they're like the way they talks about the Sokovia Accords or whatever. Like I think that he in the way that like Ross wants superheroes to be controlled by the government, it almost feels like Norman wants superheroes to be controlled by corporations.
yep. He
And like
wants
so
to
like
control superheroes, yeah.
the idea of a sorcerer with a code outside of like the law or outside of business is like so offensive to him, and so like someone with a strong code is someone you can't buy off. So,
I like
and
that.
so as the symbiote is fucking shit up, you see him knock over something leading into the area with the spider with Peter's blood. And I don't know about you, was that the moment that you realized we were gonna get some bootstrap paradox shit? Because I started hooting and hollering. A six
Okay.
shooter appeared in my hand. I started shooting it into the ceiling.
Yeah. For me, that moment was I saw you at Midtown. No, you didn't. I was like, oh,
So I knew
shit.
I knew there was time travel there, but I didn't put together that he would get that the bite would come from there. It's like, oh duh. Like yeah. And
Yeah.
so
But
I
the other moment
yeah.
that did that, there's a tie-in comic book that I got to catch up with that they
Mm,
released, and they did a very, very good
mm,
job of not revealing. You just in
mm,
the comic book, it comes out first before the first episode. You just see that
mm,
the school got messed up. You don't see
mm,
why or what happened and everything. You just hear about like, oh, there was a monster, and then you see it in the episode, and it's great. I highly
mm.
recommend to viewers and to
I'll
anybody
check it
who's
out.
following the show check out the comic book. But
Yeah.
gosh
And so
darn,
I don't know
yeah.
about I forget if you were ever viewed. I fell off watching the show a few seasons ago, but whenever I think of Bootstrap Paradox, there's one of the best openings of any episode of anything ever. The Doctor Who
Mm.
episode that opens about the Bootstrap. Do you know what I'm talking about? So
No,
there's a
no,
Doctor Who
which one?
episode. It's one of the few ones. I think it's called like After the Flood or Before the Flood or something like that. It's a Peter Capaldi
Which
episode.
who was the doctor? Was
Peter
it?
Capaldi.
Oh,
Capaldi.
okay,
It's
yeah, and
awful.
I haven't seen Capaldi.
And so it's the only I think the only time they did this, at least the seasons I watched, where the opening of it before the theme song is all just him talking to camera in the TARDIS. And
Mm.
he's like, imagine this, if you're someone with a time machine who loves culture, you go back in time because you want to meet Beethoven and you bring all of his works to sign. And when you get to Germany, no one's ever heard of him. He doesn't exist. But you can't imagine a world where Beethoven doesn't exist. So you decide to become Beethoven and you play all of it. You write all his concertos, you play all of them, and and the world's basically the same. But that begs the question: who wrote them to begin with? That's that's all paradox.
That's
And the reason why it's such an amazing opening is because
yeah.
as it's going on, he's walking around. He gets to this is why Peter Capaldi was like cool as the Doctor. Is he gets to an electric guitar, plugs it in, and after he says that last line, he plays da 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 da. It's great. You can look it up on YouTube. It's honestly Peter Capaldi's one of the fucking best. Anyway,
That's incredible. I gotta
so
watch this season.
I love the Bootstrap Paradox because it's one of my favorite. I think most paradoxes are lame semantic exercises. You know what I mean? Like if a guy cuts everyone in town's hair who doesn't cut their own hair, does he cut his own hair? Like that's just semantics. That's not actually like a thing that But
Sure.
the Bootstrap Paradox is actually thinking like, wait, what? Where does the blood come from? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Right. So it's kind of crazy that Peter's blood made Spider-Man in a way, like Peter's blood being Spider-Man made Spider-Man, and that's I don't know. I felt like that paradox like that was something that I was already sold to the show, and I feel like sometimes first seasons of shows kind of feel like pilots in a way to me, in
Yes.
that like they're making a case,
Especially in this day and age where they don't actually make pilots.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I felt like this episode for me sold the show. Like that
Yeah.
bootstrap paradox sold the show because we hadn't seen it before. It's like
Hmm.
I feel like um Civil War and Homecoming really begged the question of
Hmm.
why do we need to see an
Yeah.
origin story again? Why do we what's the reason why am I here? And so I
Because
felt like
yeah.
yeah, Trammell
Uh,
answered that question beautifully.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a thing I think one of the Vlog brothers said this like forever ago back when I was watching a lot of YouTube videos, said that you can tell what a society is worried about by what like superhero origin stories are. In that the
Yeah.
original Spider-Man origin story was a radioactive spider because we didn't understand radioactivity. But by 2002, we knew radioactivity just gave you cancer. It's not magical. But what we didn't understand was genetic editing. So a genetically altered spider was for Tobey Maguire
Mm,
and Andrew Garfield, right?
yep.
Now, I think we kind of have a better idea about genetic editing. I mean, we still sometimes do some stuff about it. But what's the thing that everyone's obsessed with that everyone doesn't really understand? Multiverse and time travel. Like how, or like the idea of like the fabric
Yeah.
of reality. Like, and obviously it's not the same thing, but I think that like our societal obsessions give way to our superhero origin stories. And it's like, right,
That is
what
very
I think
true.
we all so much of our media is about portals and time travel and different versions of characters. Yeah, of course. That this is what the Spider-Man of 2025 is from, and so I think that that's very interesting. And this episode was a lot of fighting, so not a lot of stuff happens, but I felt like it was a really cool demonstration of Peter working with someone else. I felt like the Strange characterization was really good. You know, he is grumpy but funny in the way that you like him to be.
Yeah, and also it was nice to see Peter kind of get not even a mentor figure, but just someone who is older, who is more aligned with his values. I felt like
Mm-hmm.
that was really cool. And also I think it's funny. I was thinking about why I liked Peter a lot more than a lot more in these couple of episodes. And I think something that I really liked is that like, oh, we're seeing him, be Spider-Man. We're seeing less
Mm-hmm.
of nerdy Peter. And
Yeah,
I think that that was something that to go on a quick tangent that I felt like I don't know I felt like that was something that I in certain moments I was like, "Oh, I don't know if like I don't know if nerdy Peter Parker would have these dynamics with these high schoolers here." You know what I mean? Like I don't know if that would
I
exist.
also think a problem that I think that Homecoming somewhat solves, and it's the thing that I actually saw a lot of people who are older than you and I bump up against, is that
Mm,
the place in the culture and the high school hierarchy of a nerd is just significantly different than it was even 20 years ago. And
totally.
so I think that like someone who has like Peter, because it's a distinction. I know this is gonna sound like a very nerdy thing to say, but the distinction between like a nerd and like a dork. Like Peter's never been a dork really, and like it just he's not. If someone were to have the same interest and like vibe as standard Peter Parker, he just would not be the subject of as much bullying as he used to be. Like it is not, and so I
Yeah, it's
feel
just
like yeah,
yeah. No, continue.
I just don't believe the way that he acts that he would be like a social outcast, and he's not really. I think that the Tom Holland one does like he's like not a social outcast, but he's also like okay, this guy's kind of he's kind of lame. Like, and I think that that's a
Yeah.
more realistic place.
I feel like that's a more realistic place. We're in a time where I don't know, lines are sort of blurring in general. Like we when we were in high school, I feel like the people who were book smart kind of said it best, but like some of the
Yeah,
more popular people and some of the
yeah,
more jockey people were also going to Harvard, we're also going to Yale and everything. So
yeah.
that archetype of like,
I
oh,
mean,
you got to be
yeah,
one or the other doesn't exist. So
yeah,
I felt like the moments where they embraced that were great, where it was like, oh, Peter and Lonnie being friends,
mm-hmm,
Peter not being this giant social
mm-hmm,
outcast and everything.
yeah,
And then, but the little moments where Peter's just awkward
yeah.
sometimes felt a little bit strained because I'm like, I feel like it would be chilling in this
I
world. Or
the
I feel like it
example
would
I
be
always like
different.
to the example I always like to give of how things have changed is like I have been me and have had my personality for my entire life. In fact, I might have been even worse when I was younger. And I was on homecoming court, and my best friend was the homecoming king. Like it's just like not. It is just not.
Yeah, the dynamics are
Whereas like yeah,
different.
it is not. And I've been and I dressed up as fucking the 11th Doctor on Character Day. Like I just the world is different.
Right.
But anyway, I think the thing that the top place I get to know with Spider-Man is in this, and this is the thing that people have joked about Tom Holland doing that vibe. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like,
Yep.
oh,
Yep.
excuse me. Yeah,
Oh my gosh, excuse me. Yeah,
yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they and Strange ends up using the Time Stone to go back in time, and that's where obviously the spider gets out. We have that whole moment, but they end up getting the symbiote back into the portal with like when there's a bunch of them coming through. It's a very harrowing moment.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a bad news for Oscorp, obviously, because it's a bad look to open up a portal to another dimension and almost destroy the world.
Sure.
And
They locked that up really. In a press moment, they seemed to lock that up really well. The only thing people knew is that like, oh, it may not have gone that well and
mm-hmm.
everything. But other than that, like I remember like there was that news article that
Yeah.
that news thing. So
Mm-hmm.
they locked it up really well. But I think internally, Norman kind of rocked his credibility
Yeah.
with everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he rocked his credibility with Peter. Now Peter is worried about what to do, and Harry is even worried about what to do.
Yeah. I There was that really cool moment where Peter kind of tells Norman, "You should get out of here." And
Mm-hmm.
Norman lingers for a second and then
Yeah.
he obeys and he gets out of here. But I could tell at that moment, okay, our dynamic is not the same. And it's
Mm-hmm.
so subtle and it makes me very excited for whatever the heck they're going to do like
Yeah.
with these two.
Yeah. And so Nico suggests that Harry make a company for bright young minds called
Web.
the world. The what is it? The
The
World
worldwide
Entertainment Brigade.
engineering something?
Worldwide Engineering Brigade, also known as Web.
Yeah.
And they send out some invites, yada yada. And then we have the moment where Peter and Doctor Strange are having a chat on a rooftop. And who else happens to be there?
The Watcher.
Someone seems to. I am the Watcher. Oh man! Shouts to the Watcher.
Yo, I watched that. I was like, they got everybody here. I got really excited to see the Watcher there. I think it tied the MCU of it together really well, and that's all they kind of needed. You know what I mean? Like that, all we needed was just a Watcher just chilling inside.
Exactly.
And I hope they use that a little bit more. Like I haven't seen Brave New World yet, but I hope that Fantastic Four at one point, Ben Grimm and Susan Storm are having like a nice little heart to heart and everything.
I
And then
mean,
all of a sudden the
yeah.
establishing shot, we just see, live action the Watcher there.
The thing about it is they have to do it because, like, if they don't, why else would you cast a light-skinned bald guy? like the character doesn't, because or the funny is, why would they design Owatsu to look like
to look a little bit like Jeffrey?
Yeah, if they had cast someone completely different, I'd be like, they're probably not going to. But it's like he looks too close enough where it's like, you just throw a little like an extra bald cap on top of his head, give him.
You know what my theory is? I feel like we're gonna see that in I feel like either Doomsday or Secret Wars. We're gonna see.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the Watcher appear in some capacity. The same way that we got like old school Jarvis from I think it was what you call it?
Endgame.
Yeah, in Endgame. So I'm excited.
James Darcy.
James Darcy, yes.
Yeah,
I hope they
as
do
I've
the
said
same
before,
thing.
the fact that that there's an actor named James Darcy and an actor named Brian Darcy James means that there's probably an actor named Hoffman Seymour somewhere. Anyway, that's such a dumb joke.
I love it.
Welcome back to Jake Remembers tweets he tweeted 2 years ago. We then have the bit.
Twitter.
Exactly. No, I mean, the Museum of My Twitter is a fucking ramshack next to the Museum of Twitter. So then we see a little coda for Daredevil where we learn about that Jean is Finesse, which is a superhero I definitely had heard of before.
Yeah. I thought it was great that Finesse was there. I had a question, and I hope this is true, but I feel like I have to rewatch. But I think at one point they use like non-binary pronouns to describe Finesse.
Ooh,
and
I did not catch that, but that's awesome. So
yeah, I think that there was the scene where Finesse. I think it's awesome because the scene where Finesse sneaks up and Peter's like, "You're not supposed to be up here," and then he talks about it to someone later. I think he uses they them pronouns. And I thought that was freaking dope. If so, I would love to see that, and I'm here for it. I don't know too much about Finesse as well. This was the first time I saw that, but I don't know. I hope that the same type of character appears in Born Again, or maybe I would love to see like her and this Daredevil or them and this Daredevil, buddy up more often.
Yeah,
but I thought that was so cool.
I'm looking. I can't find information, but I you know what? Let's go with it until further notice. And then we have some more codas. We have Lonnie getting rid of his Letterman jacket, and we see, like you mentioned, the vitiligo. It's sad stuff happens to the best of us. Then we have Nico using her amulet to speak to her mom, which I think is fun.
I think that's really cool.
We have Otto teasing out the his arms.
Yes. Yes.
And
Shout out Hugh
oh, like
Dancy on that role, by the
yeah.
way. That was so
The thing
fun.
is, I last week I should talk about Cecilia, the guest last week, and I don't love it that much personally. I think the reason I don't love it is because it feels inauthentic. It feels like a guy who's not a low class New Yorker doing a lower class New Yorker accent to me. But I think
Mm.
it was better in this episode. But it doesn't. It feels a little. It feels a bit like I'm walking here to me. But yeah,
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that.
yeah.
I kind of love the way that he's written and everything. I
No,
feel like
I do
that's
too. Yeah.
yeah, I really do love the way that he's written. I love the way I really like the way that they kind of showed the arms because I was expecting the arms to and this show
Mm-hmm.
is great at teasing. It's great at using
Yeah.
information that we already know and just teasing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
like the way that they showcased the arms without having it on its back. I felt like that was plenty.
Yeah.
So
Really
I'm
cool.
excited to see that come out in the future, however they decide to do it. But then
Yeah.
we see Aunt May in prison. At
Mm-hmm.
first, I thought she was gonna go to Doctor Octopus
Mm-hmm.
because Aunt May and Doctor Octopus have some history.
Mm-hmm.
But she ends up talking to somebody with Parker on their jumpsuit. I thought
Yeah,
that was
it's
really
none
interesting.
other than
Then
Richard Parker,
Richard Parker.
the father of Peter. Very interesting. I am interested to see. Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you know who he's voiced by?
No, I actually didn't catch that. Who's he voiced by?
He's voiced by spectacular Spider-Man actor Josh Keaton.
Interesting. Wow. That
I
is.
thought that was so cool because Josh
Yeah.
Keaton is to Spider-Man to me what Mark
Mm-hmm.
Hamill is to Joker. Like he
Yeah.
is very much a great animated
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man, like very iconic, and he is part of a great show, and it was amazing. So to have him play the father
Mm-hmm.
of this Peter Parker was I thought was a great reverse passing of the torch, like
Mm-hmm.
retroactive passing of
Yeah.
the torch. I thought it was so cool.
Yeah. I'm interested to see where this goes, only because I think that of all the sins that the Amazing Spider-Man 2 has, its greatest sin is that the storyline of like the secrets of Richard Parker is like such a fucking dud. Like people like joke about like how bad the Harry Osborn makeup looks, how dumb Jamie Foxx looks before he becomes Electro. Like the actual biggest problem with that movie is the whole conspiracy with his dad. Like that it just does not fully work. So
Yeah.
I'm a bit worried about like how does this work? Like how much are we going to get weighed down by sins of the father? Because that's not really a thing that's essential to the character. But as is a good thing to say, because of the show, I trust them to figure it out. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
skeptical, but I'm not worried because it's like, you know what? I trust them to be aware of the pitfalls that could come up.
Yes, I won't hold you. It's a risky move. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm feeling as a Spider-Man fan. It is a
Mm-hmm.
risky move to do this. But I
Mm-hmm.
also feel like it's in good hands, or at least very
Yeah.
thoughtful hands. They hands
Mm-hmm.
that have read through a bunch of media and
Mm-hmm.
paid tribute to the
Yeah.
highs and the low of that. So I'm excited
Yeah.
to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that to sum it up, I think like the thing that's been really nice about the show is that I feel like too many times these new shows are like very reverential and like referencing to other versions of it and like winking at it, and to the point where like they feel like they exist to comment on the other properties. And this feels like it is in conversation with those other properties, and like it's not afraid to pave its own way. It's not it 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 exists knowing that most of the audience is going to have a very deep knowledge of at least like the film and TV versions of Spider-Man. So like we don't need to lay all that groundwork. But it's also not like a version. It's not what a lot of these shows are these days, where it's just like a lot of remember that, remember that, remember that. You've seen this character before. You've seen this character before. You've seen this character
Yeah.
before, and it's
Right,
like
right.
it's in conversation, not in reference to.
Is there something, as someone who is a fan of Spider-Man, is there something that you're excited now that the whole season is done?
Yeah.
What are you excited to see, and
Mhm.
what's an opportunity of growth for you for the season?
I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see how Harry reacts to the rift that is coming between Peter and Norman, because I think
Mm,
that obviously the whole thing with Harry is that he eventually becomes a villain, but like you do one villain at a time.
absolutely.
So like how is Harry in this case? Who's very close to Peter in this version. He knows that Peter's Spider-Man. How is he gonna feel when his dad, who he clearly resents, is up against his friend, who he does not resent? At what point does him being his father's son kick in, and how does that work? Because I think that the added wrinkle of him knowing that Peter is Spider-Man the whole time, I think allows it to be unique in comparison to other versions of this story. Um, And the second question was something they can do better.
Yeah. What's something that they
Yeah,
could?
I
What's something that you
yeah.
hope to see them do
I,
better
I
in
hope
next
this
season?
them do better. I want them to flesh out. Obviously, they didn't have time and they weren't really trying. But I want to see them really go into the stuff with Nico because I think that's very interesting. And I think the the fact that she was so angry at him for having a secret when she has a secret is not. I think it's hypocritical, but also makes the character interesting. And so
Yeah,
I want to see how they handle that.
absolutely. I similarly, I'm really excited to see what to do with Harry.
Mm,
I have a soft spot for Harry Osborn, really,
yeah.
or like overall, ever since James Franco's version.
Mm-hmm,
Like, I really think it's a very interesting character.
mm-hmm,
It's a great conversation about legacy. It's a great
mm-hmm,
conversation about, even like friendship. Like, there's so much there,
mm-hmm,
and I can't wait. I'm loving that. I'm loving that they have this groundwork of friendship and
mm-hmm,
trust, and I can't
mm-hmm.
wait to see some tension between them.
Yeah.
I think I'm
Mm-hmm,
really excited about that. And I'm also excited for like the possibility there's a concept art of Spider Gwen that came
mm-hmm.
out
Yeah.
recently. And I'm excited to see the way
Mm-hmm,
the spiders that Norman has been working with grow. And maybe we see other people from the Spider-Man lore. Like maybe we see Ben Riley.
mm-hmm,
Maybe I wouldn't be surprised if like Jessica Drew is in the conversation in
mm-hmm.
some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
Madam Web in some way, shape, or form.
I mean,
I
at the very least, she sees all, so she'll be watching if she's not in it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah,
We'll be watching too. And
exactly.
I think an opportunity of growth for me, to be real, is I think beyond the animation, which I know
Mm,
they're gonna fix. I know they're gonna fix, and it already looks really great. It's just like one little tweak, but or like one little thing that needs to be fixed. I feel like the big thing for me that I would love to see is
mm.
more honest high school dynamics, especially when it
Yeah,
comes to Peter. I felt like
yeah,
that was the strain for me. And I feel
yeah,
like it's because I don't know, John Watts was able to do that really well in Homecoming,
mm-hmm.
where he paid tribute to John Hughes movies of the past, while
Mm,
also being able to kind of encapsulate how high school is for
yeah,
Gen Z kids or these
yeah,
or post Gen Z kids. And I thought that
mm-hmm.
that was very cool and thoughtful, and
Mm,
it sounded like he kind of had his ear to the ground about like what high school was like
yeah,
and what high school is like currently. And I kind of want to see Peter like go through that because I think it would be
mm,
really cool to see, okay, how is Peter's high school life different because he's a kid of the
mm-hmm.
2020s? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I would love to see
yeah.
that.
That's a really good point. And so yeah, those are the things we're hoping for. I'm really excited to see this show in the next season, and I think it's nice that it's going to be coming relatively soon. I think they're already, they're already working on it, and so yeah, this was a pleasant surprise and was a nice bridge to get us from the beginning of the year to Daredevil. Obviously, Daredevil Born Again coming in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
will be on that like white on rice.
Mm,
As anyone who knows, we're big fans of that character.
yep.
But yeah, before we go, I want to thank you, Mosiah, for coming on. Where can people find your work? Where can people, if they enjoy your dulcet tones, where can they see and hear more of you?
Absolutely. First off, thank you for having me. This was awesome. And to talk about, I felt treated by this show and I needed a place to process it.
Mm-hmm,
Thank you to Jeffrey Trammell for making it and Marvel Studios for making it. It's awesome. My name is Mosiah. You could find my work. I'm mainly on Instagram right now under mosiah.jpg. But my work is on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to music as I'm a
mm-hmm,
recording artist. I live there mostly. We're
mm-hmm.
currently writing a record right now, and we're currently finishing it, and that should be coming out soon. Is what I could say. What I could say. But we're current, so I would say stay tuned for that. In the meantime, listen to everything that came before on Spotify,
Mm-hmm.
Apple Music, YouTube, wherever you
Yep.
listen to music.
Yep, it's all there. Very talented individual. And for us, you can join our Patreon, patreon.com/MC University Pod. You can, for $3, you can get into the Discord. You can get all of our bonus content. We do 2 bonus episodes a month at least, and we've been doing it for a couple of years. So think about how many episodes you can get for just $3 a month. And if you're listening to this on Friday night or Saturday during the day, on Saturday I'm doing a charity live stream to raise money for the Trevor Project, which helps LGBTQ kids. And I'll be on twitch.tv/J_Christie. You can check me out there. And please donate and send a receipt to museumoftwitter@gmail.com. I'm trying to raise a couple $1,000, so anything helps. And if you donate, you can get some fun prizes. I'm giving away like a signed copy of Stephanie Williams' book. a signed copy of Jason Kirk's book, a couple signed copies of famous tweets that I've gotten people to agree to do. So yeah, please check that out if you can. It really is a good cause. You can follow the show on Twitter at MC University Pod. Follow me at the Jake Christie on Twitter and at Jake Christie on Blue Sky. I'm trying to be there more often since I don't love being on Twitter when it's owned by who it's owned by, but also thing is, Blue Sky just doesn't have a lot of fun people on it at the moment. But anyway, so for MOZIAH, I've been Jake Christie. Have a good one.